Hi everybody, it's Elizabeth from Arts and Medicine, and I have a story for you. It's called The Cruel King. Long, long ago, there lived a king who had a tiny kingdom by the sea. And this king, for some reason that no one could figure out, was mean. He was mean when he was a little boy as a prince, and the older he got, the meaner he got, which seemed ridiculous because he had everything he could want or need. Every morning, this king got up and he took a walk by the sea, and he lived in a cold land. But one day, when he got up and took his walk by the sea, it was unusually cold, even though he was wrapped in furs. And the king thought, I wonder how cold the water is. So he pulled off his royal glove, and he stuck his fingers into that water, and he pulled them right out because it was shivering, freezing cold. And as he did that, his most wicked idea came to him, and this was it. He sent a challenge to all the people of his land that whoever could go out into that water, neck deep, and stay for an entire day and an entire night, 24 hours, he would give that person 100 gold coins, which to you and me would be like $1 million. So people gathered in the coffee houses and the town squares, and they read the king's challenge, and they thought, oh no, now he's not just mean, maybe he has dementia. We're not going out there. We know how cold that water is. Absolutely not. No way. But of course, there was one man who really needed the money for his family. And he thought, I'm young, I'm strong, and I'm an excellent swimmer. I bet I could do it. So he went to the king and said, Your Majesty, I accept your challenge. And the king said, that's fine, but you listen to me. You cannot use anything to keep yourself warm. Is that clear? Yes, Your Majesty. So the next morning, before the sun rose, the man and the king met by the sea. The man stripped down to just his bathing suit, and he began walking into the water. When he was up to his ankles, he was already shivering. When he got to his knees, he began turning blue. When he got to his hips, he was shaking all over. When he got to his chest, his teeth started clacking together. And when he got to his neck, he could hardly breathe. And he thought, this is a mistake. I should turn around. But he felt like there was something telling him it would be all right. So he stayed in the water, and he thought, how in the world am I going to keep myself warm? And he closed his eyes and said a prayer. And when he opened his eyes, he realized he was facing east, where the sun rose, and the sun was just beginning to rise. And he thought, that's it. I will use my imagination. I will focus on the sun. I am the sun. I am hot. I am boiling. I am blazing. I am on fire. So all day, all he did was think about how hot he was, because he was the sun. And he, as the sun, climbed into the sky all the way to high noon. And then, with a lot of sadness, he turned to the west and watched the sun as it slowly set on the other side of the earth. But he was still there. He was alive. And he thought, I've made it this far. I can make it through the night. I will focus on the moon. The moon is a reflection of the sun's light. And he searched the sky. But it was the night of no moon. And he thought, that's all right. I'll focus on a star. The sun is a star. I am a star. I'll find a star and focus on that. And he searched the night sky again. The clouds had just rolled in, and he couldn't find a single star. And he thought, that's all right. I can remember the sun. I know what the sun looks like. And he closed his eyes and he said another prayer. And when he opened his eyes, he realized he was facing west now because he had turned around to watch the sunset. And stretched before him was the king's palace. And all was dark save one window, way up in a corner of the castle. And in that window, there was a beautiful woman next to a candle. And somehow the man in the sea thought, she's looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and that candle is burning, and she's not going to leave, and she won't let the candle go out. So all night long, he stared at the woman and her candle, and all night long, she stared back. And the next morning, when the sun began peeking over the other side of the earth, the man walked out of the sea, shivering, quaking, blue, but alive. And he went to the king and he said, Your Majesty, my 100 gold coins, please. And the king said, Just a minute. You cheated. What? Your Majesty, I did not. No, I didn't cheat. Look at me. I didn't. How could I cheat? And the king said, Well, you must have. You must have used something to keep yourself warm. No, I suppose I did. I used my imagination. And the king said, I knew it. Throw him in the dungeon. And the man was thrown in the dungeon. Well, the beautiful woman next to the candle in the window was the king's daughter. And when she heard what her father did to that man, that was it for her. She ran away. No one could find her for a week, for a month, for a few months. And finally one of the king's men came and said, Your Majesty, I found her, but she won't come home. So the king said, Take me to her. He was taken to his daughter, who was sitting cross-legged under a tree next to a candle. She looked very thin. She looked very unclean. And her father said, Get up and come home this instant. And she said, I cannot. And her father said, Well, what in the world are you doing? And she looked at him and she said, I'm cooking rice. What? Said her father. Yes, I'm cooking rice. See my candle? And see that pot of rice hanging from the tree? I'm cooking it. Well, that is ridiculous. You can't cook rice with a candle. No. My candle kept a man warm all night in a freezing cold sea. I thought surely it could cook a little pot of rice. Well, when she said that, something in the king's tiny, cold heart broke open. And he lay down and put his head in his daughter's lap, and he cried for all the things he had done over the years. And she let him cry. And when he was finished, she dried his tears. And they stood up and they walked home together, where the king went straight to the dungeon. He bowed low to the man, apologized, and set him free with 200 gold coins. And every day after that, no matter the weather, the king and his daughter walked by the sea every morning. And the king would dive into the waves to remind himself who he had been and who he had become. And that was a very kind king indeed. Here ends the tale of the cruel king. As always, thank you for listening.